Hi everyone. The Holy Sepulchre. We have already done the tour of the church. Last time we walked in the church. We explored all the chambers. We explored the rest of the Via Dolorosa stations. As you know, there are 14 of them, and four of them are located in the church itself. Um, since today we are focusing on the Holy Sepulchre and an alternative site, which is the Garden Tomb, and I'm talking about the Protestant and evangelical tradition, right? Um, I want to sort of juxtapose the two places. Well, it's not really. We're not going to run a contest, and there's not going to be a winner. There's just two versions, two traditions. One of them I would say is stronger. So Holy Sepulchre version definitely prevails, given all the factors, archaeology, and so on and so forth. That's kind of a spoiler, maybe, but it's not. And there is another version that, well, the Garden Tomb. So we need to see, because Garden Tomb also has a lot of interest in archaeology and definitely gives us food for thought, but it's not that simple. We have to go back to times of Herod the Great. I'm going to just point out a few things that we covered last time. It's quite essential for understanding like what we are talking about today. Why Herod is important? Because exactly during the times of Herod, meaning the first century BCE, well, first of all, the city of Jerusalem looked very different, so it had a different outline, and the territory where the Holy Sepulchre Church is now located used to be outside of the city walls. We know that for a fact. What you see here is it's the visuals you can find on Wikipedia and also on the Holy Land website. I use a lot of their visuals. This is not my visuals, obviously, and there even used to, so there was a garden, and there was even the garden gate, which had the kind of the remains of which had been found. So what was on that spot? There was a quarry that had been used during times of Herod. What for? For the construction of the Temple Mount, and also the Antonia fortress that would be built, well, according to one tradition, I mean, it's not a tradition, okay? So the Antonia fortress, which is believed in the Christian tradition that it had been the place of trial of Jesus. It was a palace of Pontius Pilate. Well, I mean, Pontius Pilate resided in Antonia fortress on during that visit, but nevertheless, so Herod had a lot of work. Herod needed a lot of stones. So he would be using several quarries in the vicinity of the Temple Mount, and this is one of that quarry. When that quarry became obsolete, it was just left like this, and there was a small garden, and some places were used as quarries, even some areas of it, and also there were tombs. And well, if you see the three crosses over there, it is believed that exactly the edge of the quarry was the Golgotha. You see the crosses there, so the territory is clearly outside of the city walls. And this is a kind of a view from a different angle, right? So you see the Golgotha from here. There are different versions of it, obviously. We don't know what had happened, how exactly the area looked, but at least you have the idea. So it was outside of the city wall at some point. So there was an elevation, the natural, the bedrock with some garden around it. Well, and there must have been a gate. We know that there was a gate, and the gate was found, the remnants of it, so to speak, by archaeology. This is the model in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. So you would have an idea, but the model was created before the Garden Gate remnants was actually found. But this is the place where the Garden Gate was. We rely a lot on the descriptions of Josephus Flavius, the historian from the times of Herod, and well, another version. So basically, the idea is the same, very close to the city, still behind the walls. There was definitely a garden gate, and that fits the narrative absolutely. Close to the city, and it was a garden, and there was a bedrock for sure, and yeah. So John 19, We read many of the Jews read the sign for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. So it was near the city, like it fits, really a stone throw away from the city itself. It's also important to understand that there was very little time. I know many of you can, but you know these lines by heart. But anyway, let's once again read what the Matthew has, the Gospel of Matthew. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. And Joseph took the body and wrapped it in the clean linen shroud and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. This is important for us because we're going to need that as I would say our reference point. And it was Friday, right? Friday the Shabbat should begin where the sun set, right? So they had the trial was early in the morning. The execution was somewhat around noon time, and they had just very little time to bury. Jews try to bury the deceased uh the same day because the dead flesh is extremely impure. So there are a lot of traditions around that, and so Joseph from Arimathea actually happened to have his new tomb cut exactly in the same garden. So that fits perfectly. That's how they managed to save time, and they managed to do everything before Shabbat. And exactly on that place, above everything, above the place of execution, right, and the place of entombment, was built in the 4th century by Constantine and Helena Augusta. His mother was built the tremendously gorgeous and grand Holy Sepulchre Church. Well, this is just kind of the sort of the blueprints. Okay. When did Jerusalem kind of well, when did the Jerusalem change its looks? When was this place included in the city limits? Well, Herod Agrippa significantly extended the city. He also built a so-called third wall, the remnants of which can be found, by the way, not far from the Garden Tomb. So, but nevertheless, so this would be territory significantly extended, as you can see the orange color, and this is when the Calvary or the Golgotha, which means the Golgotha from Aramaic means a skull. Golgalet is the skull in Hebrew, so Aramaic was the spoken language at that time, and Hebrew was the language of the scripture. So that's it. This is when it became part of the city limits, but not at times of Jesus. A little bit later, so we're talking 1st century Common Era. And then, as you know, and then in 135 AD, Hadrian having completely razed Jerusalem to the ground, he rebuilt it as a pagan city, and this is when all of that stopped making any sense at all. But the place remained. Hold on, I want to switch off the sound. It's gonna be really distracting me. This is the edicle from the Greek. It's translated as a small house. Basically, this is the tomb of Jesus, empty tomb of Jesus, and the 14th station. So Jesus is laid to the tomb. It doesn't look like a cave. It doesn't look like a cave at all. But that's because the city was completely rebuilt, first and foremost, completely rebuilt. Hadrian placed his pagan temples both on the Temple Mount and also here because he both hated the Jewish traditions and these pseudo Christian something traditions, whatever it was. He hated those monotheistic traditions, and that's why he built the pagan temples to make sure the traditions would die down. Little did he know, but that's a whole different story. So, and also it's important to understand that there have been several earthquakes. There was a fire. The church itself was destroyed in the beginning of the 11th century by the Muslims, and that actually was exactly the reason for the Crusades to begin. But they would begin a little later, nevertheless. So don't expect to see any cave there anymore. However, there is some amazing archaeology, quite recent one, which I will be sharing closer to the end. So this is the video filmed by me a couple of years ago, before the war clearly. And all these people are standing in line to actually enter the edicule. So there you would see two chambers, and we're going to see that too. They're amazing photographs by Madame Project. And you can stay there for half a minute maybe maximum. You can pray there, but this is it. It for a long time it doesn't well it hasn't been looking like a cave, and this is totally fine. But the edicle itself also has changed over the course of time. If you don't want to stand and wait, you can just peer through this small windows, but this is not, well, there's not so much you can see, but at least it's something. So inside, as you enter, there are two chambers, and this is the so-called angel stone. Remember the well, we will also be talking a bit a little later about. So there was an angel when Jesus resurrected. There was an angel sitting on the stone. So this is believed, to have been the angel stone, and this is the empty tomb of Jesus. This is where, well, on the same place, not on this marble slab. We'll talk about these marble slabs later, but on this place, this is imagine that this is the floor of the tomb that once was part of of the tomb in the rock. Let's put it like that. So empty tomb of Jesus, and that's the most important part. This year I have, I was in Jerusalem a couple of months ago. I mean, in Israel, and I have been to this church multiple times, and I want to share with you the videos that I filmed. And they were very, I would say, very few people. There was no line, so I felt absolutely comfortable. It's not allowed to film, but I just thought it was the only chance for me to do so. And this is the first chamber, so this is kind of the entrance, so to speak, and you can see, well, the atmosphere is amazing. The place is magical, and the next chamber is exactly the empty tomb itself. So exactly here, this is believed to be the place where Jesus's body was laid, and this I filmed with my tourists, because I also got to guide today. Today, back then, and you can put your crosses, you can put whatever you have, you place it. This is the most sacred place, I would say, for the Christianity, regardless of your denomination, I believe. So that's why all these people a couple of years ago were standing and passionately waiting for their half a minute maximum to see the empty tomb of Jesus. So, and the Coptic chapel, by the way, the Coptic chapel from the back side of the edicule shares the same wall with the edicule, so and the same wall with the empty tomb of Jesus. So just in case, it's an interesting alternative if you don't want us to wait, if you don't have energy, if you don't have patience, it's not that important to you. At least you know that this is very close. But there is one another amazing thing, that there are many graves uh, you can find just to the side from the edicule. It's important, so I'm going to be showing it to you. And these are exactly how the graves from the Second Temple period, and the times of Jesus is the Second Temple period. The First Temple is from, let's say, the 980 something times of King Solomon BCE, right to 586 BCE. And then This is when the first temple was destroyed, and then after 50 years, a little bit over than that, the second temple was rebuilt. Then it was extended in the first century BCE by Herod, but then destroyed in the 70 AD by the Romans. But that's the second temple period. And in the Syriac Orthodox chapel, we see the graves, exactly the graves that match the timing, that are dated the same time, second temple period. They look like the gate, like the graves in the second temple period, and that's what matters. Um, Basically, this is how the grave of Jesus looked. But because of all the destructions, because of all the turbulence, this is how it was. And as you know, a year after the burial, when the flesh had rotten, the bones would be placed in these ossuaries or bone boxes. And that was a common practice throughout the Second Temple period. Well, obviously the practice is changed, but that's exactly how Jesus would have been buried had he been just a human being, just an ordinary Jew. That's what matters now. So we will be coming back to the Holy Sepulchre, but let's focus on the Garden Tomb. So we've given to the Holy Sepulchre several tours. Now let's give some time to the Garden Tomb, a very interesting site. We are now looking at the Damascus Gate. We are outside of the modern old city of Jerusalem, and we are now sort of in the East Jerusalem part. And yes, the Garden Tomb is definitely outside of the old city. That's for sure. It exactly was like that at times of Jesus, and it's still like this. However, it's not so simple. So the Damascus Gate has another name. It's in Arabic it's Bab al-Amud, the Gate of Pillar. In this name, the actual archaeology has been preserved. So definitely at times of Hadrian, there and exactly this is exactly when um, we believe that that pillar was placed there. There must have been some sort of a monument, I don't know, stela or anything, a monument to Hadrian, and and there was the city gate. There must have been some city gate or anything, and that's the name. But we're interested in Damascus Gate because it's kind of an interesting reference point for us. The Damascus Gate is now behind our back. If we go a little bit to the right and then cross the street, we will find ourselves in an interesting location. A big, big, big bus stop. But before that, we can see the bedrock. We are going past the walls of the old city, and we see that the walls are actually built on top of the bedrock. So the bedrock is absolutely crucial for us. And now, so we have quickly crossed the street, and yes, we are going to visit the bus stop, the bus terminal for East Jerusalem. So from here, buses go to Palestinian territories. They go throughout East Jerusalem as well, and East Jerusalem is totally okay. You can visit it regardless of your faith, your ethnicity, your citizenship. East Jerusalem is part of Jerusalem, but yes, it's mostly inhabited by Arabs, Palestinians who can live in Jerusalem, and that's just kind of it's just part of Jerusalem. That's it. But why are we here? It might look really awkward, but it's a very important place because if you can see above the buses, there is a place. It's a bedrock. It's kind of a cliff or something, and it looks like eyes looking at you. Remember Calvary, Golgotha, skull. So another tradition, the Protestant tradition, evangelical tradition, claims that Holy Sepulchre is not the place, and there is an alternative site, and that's but it's not the bus stop itself. It's more than that. It's just the whole part of the bedrock over there, and we are going to be talking about it. It's not that simple, but no, we're not going to spend the entire hour in the bus terminal of East Jerusalem. No, we're not going to do that. And by the way, this video, but this very couple minutes, I filmed a couple months ago, and it does look like a skull, and it looked even more like a skull before. See this building? Well, um, um, let's say this is the residential building, the one that we were just standing by. And when this building was being constructed in the 19th century, there was, well, they were digging and digging and they discovered graves. This is when Conrad Schick, and a German an engineer, archaeologist, and uh, great explorer of the Holy Land and Jerusalem in particular, was called up. And from then on, he would be in charge of the excavations, where a lot of graves, well, okay, some graves would definitely be discovered. I mean, they would be discovered. But so if we're standing with our backs to the house, actually the house is to the right hand side from here. So I took the photos from a little different location. So, but nevertheless, the house is to the right hand side, and there was a garden next to this house. So that's where the excavations were. And you see the house on top over there. I don't have a pointer, I know, but this house kind of, it's already within the old city. So this is the old city wall that is resting on a big bedrock, on a big mountain, right? And the house that sticks from there, at that time, so mid 19th century, we're talking, lived Charles George Gordon. He was actually a traveler, and he stayed in Jerusalem for a while, and every time, well, looking from his windows, looking from just he was just overlooking Jerusalem, and he would every time just see this skull, and he was terrified. And then he realized that it might have been not just as well, it might have been not just his imagination. When you see things, but you're not actually sure that everybody else sees these things, but a little before that, when I would say the interest towards the Holy Land started growing kind of for the second time after Napoleonic Wars, right? After Napoleon also invaded Jaffa, which is now part of Tel Aviv, right? So this is when kind of again the world remembered of the Holy Land, and little by little the interest would grow, and a lot more visitors would be coming. It was not yet the pilgrimage, or the fully fledged pilgrimage. It would start a little later, like 1860, but we were talking like 1840, the end of the 1840s. So there would be, some ideas, mostly put forward by theologians, claiming that Holy Sepulchre could not be the place, and they were looking and looking and looking for something else. They were just looking for an alternative. Those were Protestant theologians, obviously, theologists. And this is when Charles Gordon kind of put two and two together, and he said, well, that must be the place. And then when Conrad Schick actually carried on excavations and indeed proved the point that there had been more graves, this is when all of it came together like a big puzzle. I mean, definitely, it does, right? So, where are we? This is the modern city of Jerusalem, old city of Jerusalem. You see Damascus Gate. And if you go a little bit to the right along the Sultan Suleiman Road, this is where the Garden Tomb would be. And as you see it in the Christian photo, the Holy Sepulchre is within the old city, like for sure. Let's see a different map. So we are talking here already the times of Jesus. You see the city look differently. What we need to understand is that the Temple Mount, right? You see the temple over there. You see Palace of Herod. Well, okay, Antonia Fortress is a little bit um, 12 o'clock, right? You can see that. And the Golgotha traditional site is place number 6. It's not far from the Antonia Fortress, the alleged place of the trial of Jesus, and like it fits the itinerary, so to speak, of Via Dolorosa, and it's not far. This is true. And now this is a bigger map, the biggest scheme. You can see digit number 2. This is the Garden Tomb, and digit number 1 is the Golgotha. That's the place we are now discovering. Definitely outside of the city, for sure, but it's a little further from the Antonia Fortress, but still not too far. So actually, two sites kind of fit. If we completely disregard the tradition of the Via Dolorosa, and because it's a tradition that was laid by the Crusaders. So for the evangelical Christian and Protestants, this doesn't really mean much, especially for the evangelical Christians. So technically, it's not really that far. So it could be the place. Absolutely. You can also see the area that is marked with a kind of a peachy shade, and it refers to the later walled areas, but this would be built in the 1st century by Herod Agrippas, and this is the so-called third wall. And but it has nothing to do with the times of Jesus. So let's move on. So both theories fit. So now you can see it way better, closer. Yeah, okay. So the Golgotha, the Calvary, the skull, that was number 1. This is digit number 2. That's the grave that was discovered in the 19th century by Conrad Schick. It wouldn't be the only grave. So since it's some tomb, and since, well, the place is called the Garden Tomb, let's see what there is. Obviously, the garden is modern. The garden was built in the late 19th century, and in early 20th century, the Garden Tomb Association was formed. It's based in Europe, actually. It's the headquarters, and it's all run by this organization. Anyone can visit. The visit is free. You only need to coordinate it. But other than that, it's okay. You're welcome. And you can conduct your services there. I mean, the religious services, but it all has to be coordinated. That's basically it. And from the territory of the Garden Tomb, we are now going to look at this skull. From here, it doesn't look that impressive. It doesn't look this much of a skull. But in this photo taken in the 19th century, this does look like a skull. I mean, just imagine Gordon looking at this every day. I mean, it does give me, goosebumps. It does look like a skull. Absolutely. So what is it? Right? Well, nevertheless. So let's see what we have here from the Gospel of John. So the Pilate delivered Jesus to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus and led him away. And he, bearing his cross, went out into a place called the place of a skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha, where they crucified him. And 2 others with him, the thieves, right? And on the either side, and Jesus in the center. Technically speaking, since this place looks like a skull, it could have been, if the place fits, it could have been this elevated area where the 3 crosses would be placed. And then somewhere very close by had to be the grave. And yes, the grave was discovered, so it fits. It's not far from the place of from the trial, the Antonia Fortress, right? It's not far from there. It was definitely outside of the city walls for sure. So it kind of really fits. Now we just need to understand whether the tomb fits the time frame. At some point in the 20th century, part of the skull fell off, but part of the, I mean, the rock fell off, and it looks a little less like skull, but nevertheless. So, did anyone else pick up this new idea? Did anyone else agree with Gordon? Gordon was not an archaeologist, but he even wrote a research paper on that. Edward Robinson, who, by the way, contributed immensely in the archaeology of the Holy Land, he supported the tradition. She supported the new idea of the as the garden tomb being alternative to the Holy Sepulchre. Edward Robinson is a big deal. He identified a lot of places. Well, he is the one who identified correctly the Capernaum, Farnahum, the Capernaum, right, in the Galilee, the place where Jesus lived. Stayed for some time. And he also uh, mm, after him is named the famous Robinson's Arch. And this place was discovered in the 19th century. The ground level was way higher, obviously, and he thought that was part of the archway. And he was right, but it took them another century to uncover the rest of it. So everything that is below the 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 square-shaped stones that are lighter in color than the other stones, it was all the ground level. That's important to understand. So this is when all the excavations would finish at that point, almost. So this is Otto Thenius, the theologies that started looking for the advocates of this new theory. He was the one. He was among the first Protestant priests that started looking for the alternatives to Holy Sepulchre. And while Gordon supported his idea, Edward Robinson sort of supported the idea. Conrad Schick just provided some archaeology, but that was it. For Charles Gordon, that was actually, I would say, kind of the fixation. Some people would even say that it was a Gordon's Calvary. That was it. Most archaeologists and scholars at that time were quite skeptical about it, but they could not really come up with anything because there was no carbon-14 analysis yet developed. There was no more archaeology, and they just had to wait. But the two traditions started to exist, and ever since then, ever since late 19th century, the garden tomb is the important site. Let's put it like this. Sir Charles Wilson, another amazing archaeologist, also contributed a lot, especially to the archaeology around the Temple Mount, which is important to us because we're going to be talking about the Temple Mount. So Wilson discovered several arches. Wilson discovered one of the ways, one of the entrances to the Temple Mount from the Western Wall, and many other sites. Well, this is the Wilson's Arch. So this was actually a ramp that was used most probably, allegedly, by the high priest to enter the Temple Mount. So again, so the two places not far from the Antonia Fortress. Let's just disregard for a second. Let's disregard the Via de la Rosa, since it's Catholic tradition. We're talking about the times way older than that. Okay, so we kind of identified the both places. So what's next? We need to see whether the grave actually looks like the Second Temple period graves. So let's explore the grave. The grave is there. That territory you cannot visit. There actually is a big cave, but it belongs, well, it is used by one of the Arab families, so there is no entry there, and it's quite dirty there, so nobody goes there. But you have to know that there are a lot of interesting caves. not graves, sorry, caves. I hope I said caves. I'm not sure anymore what I said. It's a beautiful garden. It's just a beautiful place to be, regardless of what you believe in and what denomination you belong to, whether you are a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. It's just a lovely place to be in, and it's free of charge. There are not so many places in Israel that are free of charge. So it's always a good idea to visit the garden too. And it's amazing that the archaeological excavations indeed have, uh, well, they have provided mm, the artifacts that prove the fact that they here had been a garden. They found some tools, they found some vegetation, but you see what they say? They say just two, because so far there hasn't been found anything that supports the idea that this was the tomb of Jesus. We'll talk about it in a minute. Other than that, there indeed was found a water source. There was found the remnants of a fountain, which the water had to be coming from somewhere. And indeed, there was found a huge cistern. Well, this is the same Matthew, Matthew verse 27. We already read it, so I'm not going to repeat myself. But you remember the story, there was a garden, right? Whenever there is a garden, and it wasn't, we don't know how green and lavish it was back then, but we know that actually in the 19th century, there hadn't been any garden here at all. And in general, it's, I would say, quite a barren land. It's almost a desert, okay? The it's the Judean desert is basically like 20 minutes drive already. So that's it. But there was found a fountain. This is a modern one, but it's on the same place where the fountain had been discovered, was discovered. And there had to be a water source for a garden. Otherwise, it was not possible for a garden to exist. And look at that. This is the size of a cistern, very close to the garden. There's no access. It's closed. It's sealed. You can't go there. You don't want to go there. I mean, I want to, but I wouldn't. Imagine all this. So you kind of have an idea, right? So yeah, there was a good enough water source that supplied water to the garden. And that was obviously the rainwater that is collected, but there was also, well, there obviously were other water sources in Jerusalem, but not in this area, not here. There was actually one water source, the Gihon Spring, right? We spoke about it a lot when we discovered this, when we explored the city of David. But obviously, there were also a lot of cisterns to collect the rainwater. So every drop counts in the Holy Land. That's for sure. So now we are approaching the tomb, the one that Conrad Schick discovered. And well, again, let's put it like this. The grave is definitely ancient, but so we are still, let's say, we are in the 19th century. So we have no we have no means, we have no tools to date it. We can't carry out carbon-14 analysis, nothing like that. We can't do anything. But we see this, a very complex architecture from different times. Looked like there were some reconstructions, looked like there was some sort of a vault. So maybe this is something Crusader times, maybe. Okay, let's come closer. Let's see what else we've got in there. By the way, there is a groove. You see, there is a groove which kind of fits, because we know that Joseph from Arimathea, he also rolled a stone to seal the tomb of Jesus. This fits. Very interesting. But thanks to the modern technologies, this group is believed to have been at least well, as early as, well, this is believed to have been from the times of the Crusaders. And it is believed that it did, and we know that there were found the organic material that dates and the dates coincide with the Crusader period, which is 12th and the 13th century, Common Era, obviously. So we know that during the Crusader time, the place was in use, and it must have been, well, some sort of stables. And that group was used to steal the stables. Most likely. Now, okay. Well, and obviously Crusaders would have never used an important place like that as the stables, which means that they had no idea that they never considered this place a place related to Jesus, the Jesus entombment, and so on and so forth. There was no tradition like that. Now, let's finally enter and see what the place has to offer. A huge grave, by the way. Okay, it's not as huge as the cistern, but I mean, okay, we see tombs, and they look different from the tombs we saw in the Holy Sepulchre, right? They actually look similar to the tombs of the First Temple period, uh, which is not the period we are looking for. What is this? This clearly looks like some new inscription. Actually, there was found an inscription, but this is the fresh one. And that inscription, well, I'm kind of providing this, explanation of what there is. So, like, it's kind of a simple Greek cross on the wall. Around it are Greek letters that stands for Jesus Christ, Jesus the Messiah, and also letters Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. So this is a reference to the words spoken by Jesus in Revelation. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. So this is clearly something, well, actually, the original description that was found there is dated to the times of the Byzantine period. We're talking here fourth, fifth, and this 6th century, a little bit of the 7th century of the Common Era. So if it's the First Temple period graves, like, okay, what do Byzantines have to do with it? Well, we believe that during Byzantine time, this place was in use, and it was not related to Jesus himself, but this place was used as a burial site. It's most likely they used this place as a burial for their monks, so some sort of religious figures. That's it. You see, this is very different. This is definitely different from the Second Temple period grave. This is not a cave. This did not look like a cave at all. So that doesn't fit. So the Garden Tomb Administration is very careful with wording, very careful. So even on their website, they claim that this place is associated with, is believed to have been the place. By the way, that's the Rolling Stone. However, this is not the original Rolling Stone, and it's not a secret. The original Rolling Stone that had been discovered went missing. We don't know what happened to it. So this is the Rolling Stone found elsewhere in Israel and brought to the Garden Tomb. So you could kind of have an idea what the Rolling Stone looked like. And well, with the groove, it would go straight to the entrance and seal the entrance of the tomb. So there is kind of an archaeology you can't really beat. Does it mean that the place is no interesting at all? There's no any interest in archaeology at all? Not really. So let's now do a little bit of the juxtapositioning, juxtaposing the two sites, right? So again, we saw the graves in the Holy Sepulchre. But why the grave of Jesus looks different? The edicle looks different. Remember that the temple that Hadrian built, the pagan temples. So this is where they were, and it was completely covered. So completely. That's why, in order to build the Holy Sepulchre Church, Constantine and Helena, his mother, they had to completely tear down all the pagan architecture, and they had to build from scratch on top of the place. That's basically it. So that's why you cannot find anything, well, that's why there is no actually cave on that place, and there is no actual grave that looks as it, well, it's supposed to look. Now, this is the upper floor in the Holy Sepulchre Church. This is one of the last stations of the cross, station 12. Jesus dies on the cross. So we are on top of the Golgotha. We are now on top of that part of the bedrock that had to look like a skull. We don't see any skull here. You can come quite close. You can see it's the bedrock, and there is even an indentation in the bedrock, which is believed exactly where the cross was put. And if you go downstairs, you will see the same bedrock from the side. And also, there is an interesting Greek Orthodox chapel right underneath us. So we need to go down. That's where you are, the Greek Orthodox chapel of Adam. So this is the lower section of the Golgotha. Do we see a skull? No, we don't. But even if it was there, we wouldn't have been able to see it because of all the constructions, because of everything that had been built. So there could have been a skull, but we don't see that. So that's the edicle again. So that's why the place that was identified as the place of entombment looks different now. Once again, the angel stone, the empty tomb, you see these marble slabs. Okay, these slabs are not the original slabs, obviously. These slabs were placed in the 16th century to protect this. Well, and just to remind you that the current Holy Sepulchre was built by the Crusaders in the 12th century, right? So this is a completely different building. It was all completely destroyed anyway. So there's no cave of where Jesus was built, where Jesus was buried. So these marble slabs were placed in the 16th century to protect the bedrock from, well, from everything. Just imagine that on a daily basis, pilgrims will be coming here. There would be a lot of, obviously, there would be a lot of candle wax, different things that the pilgrims would be bringing and anything. So, but several years ago, there were conducted some works, and under the supervision of the Greek Orthodox Church, and also Franciscans and Armenians also supervised the whole process. And archaeologists had 1 week to explore what's actually beneath these marble slabs that date to the 16th century. This is the footage I found on YouTube. I just screen recorded it. So they work 24/7 to do as much as possible. And let's see what they actually found. They found a lot of, well, ashes. They found a marble slab that they dated to the 1st century, by the way. And they found the marble slab with the cross indentation on it. That's the Crusader period. And they also found a small, okay, like this, just to be completely completely up to the point. So they found a marble slab, or that itself dates, mm, well, let's say most likely first century Common Era, but it is believed that the indentation was made during the Crusader period. Maybe that slab was brought from somewhere else, because we know that Crusaders, well, they used a lot of secondary use construction materials, and it was placed on top of a bedrock. So actually, here you see a hand with a brush. This is already the bedrock underneath this plaque, this marble plaque, which within the time frame of the first century Common Era. So the remnants in the organic material found there dates to the first century Common Era, which is which fits which fits exactly the time of Jesus. That's it. With the marble slab, okay. It's we're not sure exactly which period that is, but clearly, well, they have been able to identify that the indentation is the Crusader period. But underneath bedrock, first century Common Era. Well, that's the garden tomb. Nothing there, no archaeology actually fits here. So the description, the layout of the tomb itself doesn't work. It doesn't help. But do we know who could have been buried there? That's interesting. So when I was in Jerusalem and in Israel this summer, I attended tons of courses, tons of tours done by my teachers, by my colleagues. And I attended the tour of Saint Etienne Basilica, Saint Stephen's Basilica. It's in East Jerusalem. It's all down the Damascus Road. And there was, well, but this is not my photo, it's a photo from Wikipedia. I will be doing a tour of Saint Etienne. It's a beautiful church, but not now. So it is believed that the original church that was built here, and it was consecrated to Saint Stephen. So one of the earliest martyrs, in Christianity. It was built by Queen Eudocia or Eudokia. And on the premises of Saint Etienne, there, well, this is not my photo, it's the photo uh, um, from the internet. I'm not even sure where this photo is from. So there was some interesting finding made on the territory of the Saint Etienne. What you saw was the roof. What you saw, so you see this Tomb of Kings, you see this illustration, you see the big tomb. So the top of it, you see the ground level. So what we just saw here is believed to be the roof of that tomb that was discovered by Conrad Schick. So as I said, Conrad Schick discovered more than just one grave. There's a lot more. It's now sealed, so this you can't go there now. So the grave was so big, and it was well, beautifully decorated. However, there was no indication, there was no body. It had been looted multiple times, and they had no idea who was buried there. Nowadays, we know that this grave dates, well, to the First Temple period. It's about 2,700 years old. We know it now. Back then, they didn't know it, so they called it the Tomb of the Kings. They referred to the Tomb of the Kings that actually is supposed to be somewhere, not far from the city of David. Well, somewhere. But so they thought that the Tomb of Kings would be, well, they had no idea. They didn't have any carbon-14 or any other means to date it, so they just named it the Tomb of Kings. But now we know that this is not the Tomb of Kings. Hold on a second. Yeah, just had to do with something here. So this must have been an important burial. We don't know who, but it must have been a big one. So back then they thought maybe this was the tomb of someone from the kings. It didn't look like a priestly family burial, but well, they didn't know. Again, it's now covered, nothing, but we can also see it in the illustrations. You see the beautiful decoration, the lintel, you can see that's a big one, definitely a massive thing. And there was also found an ossuary, by the way, a broken one, looted completely. So no identification, no bones, nothing. We cannot attribute it to anyone. But the modern tradition is inclined, okay, so the modern archaeologists are inclined to believe that this was the grave of King Uziyahu, who died from leprosy. And he was first buried with other kings, right, in the tomb of kings, but then it's believed that he was reburied because he had a leprosy. And well, it didn't feel right and didn't feel safe to bury it with everyone else. So it was decided that they would rebury Uzziah. And nobody knows where Uzziah is reburied. Most probably maybe somewhere in the Garden of Gethsemane. But well, I mean, and the King of Tombs of the Tomb of Kings. I mean, the one that I'm talking about now. So they thought that that big tomb was the tomb of the kings, and they thought that Uziyahu was buried there, but then they had to rebury him elsewhere. Well, it could have been the Garden of Gethsemane, could have been elsewhere. They didn't know, but now could it have been just here, just a stone throw away from that big tomb? Maybe, who knows? We don't know. But why the Garden of Gethsemane is an interesting version as well, because there was found this stone tablet with an inscription in Aramaic. And well, it's been translated. Obviously, I don't speak in Aramaic. It says, hither were brought the bones of Uzziah, king of Judah, do not open. Because we know he had leprosy. And it was just a tablet. The grave itself is lost. So where is he buried? Was he reburied in that grave? Was he actually buried in that big grave that is called the Tomb of Kings, which is not really the Tomb of Kings? No idea. So we don't know who was buried there, but maybe, just maybe, it was Uzziyahu, the King Uzziah. Wish I knew more, wish I could share more with you, but okay, to sum it up at midnight, to sum it up. So I would say the arguments, for and against the theory. You can also see it for yourself, but the most important things is that the layouts of the graves don't match. The carbon-14 data does not match. Distance, yes, for sure. The skull, the way the bedrock looks, that matches for sure. Other than that, so it's a tradition, right? And the Garden Tomb is visited not only by evangelical Christians, not only by just Protestant groups, but it's many other groups visit it because it's a beautiful place. And it doesn't mean that evangelical Christians do not visit the Holy Sepulchre. Yes, they do. Plus, modern day tradition is very careful about the Garden Tomb, and the place has history. The place is interesting, but does it hold the water? Well, just partially, I would say so. So this has been it. It's good to know that I'm almost not overrunning. let me turn on the chat. Let me know if you have any questions. So next time we are exploring the Temple Mount. The first episode and actually the second episode are already up. Some more tours I have been able to publish for the upcoming weekend, but definitely there's a lot more to happen. I hope I will be able to fit all the content that I have for the Temple Mount for 2 videos. Maybe it will take me 3 episodes, knowing, well, you know, how um, I like to provide some extra material. We'll see. Thank you everyone for joining me. Yes, we all need to sleep it off. It's been wild. I wasn't going to do 5 tours, but I'm happy that I've taken you to Tbilisi Botanical Garden, and I like to provide alternative interpretations. I like to provide, well, interest in archaeology and findings and something solid and something scientific. Wish I had more explanation. I don't. Will we ever know who was buried there? I doubt. But eventually, it's still about the faith and it's about, I guess, the belief. Sometimes it doesn't need any reason, right? It doesn't need to be logical. It just because it's faith. That's what matters. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Dorley. You nailed it. We all did it. We all did it. Thank you, dear. Kol hakavod to all of us. Kol hakavod in Hebrew it means, well, you've done a great job. Good for you. So good for all of us. Kol hakavod, everyone. I will see you next weekend. And thank you for your support. Thank you for your interest in my tours. And thank you, well, being here with me this amazing weekend. Are other tours from today available to view now? Dolores, I haven't shared the recordings yet, so it's only my Tbilisi live streams are there. So hopefully tomorrow, I should have some time tomorrow. I will be able to share the recordings. It's just been a little bit full on in these past couple of days. But these are the Tbilisi live streams, the Halloween themed and the other one. Уважение, like respect. Well, respect. Spelling is a little bit different, but yes, kind of a kavod is respect. But kol kavod they say when they want to praise you. So yeah, kavod is respect. That's true. But it means wow, good for you, amazing. But yes, thank you everyone. I will see you next weekend. Bye bye. That's enough, Dorley. I understood you. You're right.